Welcome everybody to the first FLIR webinar. Thank you to eDarley for sponsoring the webinar. Hopefully we can provide you with some very informative information and some insight into selecting thermal imagers, what thermal imager is right for you, and help you along the way. For the sales folks that are in here, hopefully this can help you help your customer make the right selection, because as everybody knows, not all thermal imagers are alike. So let's start with a little bit of who is FLIR. FLIR is the worldwide leader in thermal imaging. We dominate the market because, number one, we have multiple segments, everything from maritime to aviation to military to firefighter applications to instrument applications. In fact, we're very proud of the fact that we spend more in research and development annually than our next closest competitors make in revenue. We have a mission, and our mission is that we like to improve the way that we all live by providing innovative sensing technologies into daily lives. And if you take a look, using thermal imaging, you can see the person in the picture that was kind of obscured and hiding within those bushes. It's an excellent application for thermal imaging, using it for searching for missing people. And a lot of fire departments have embraced that, as well as police agencies. But let's focus today on solutions for the firefighter. At FLIR, we take our public safety agencies in special light, and we like to come up with products that are going to be designed to function flawlessly for our first responders, our firefighters, that are going to work for them and the job that they do, even down to the design of the product so that it fits in a gloved hand, so that a firefighter would never be inclined to take a glove off in order to use a thermal imaging camera. So everything from the ergonomics to the form factor to the weight to the display is taken into consideration when we look at a thermal imaging camera. And isn't that a pretty important point when we're selecting thermal imagers, whether it be for the decision maker, that company officer, or whether it be for the individual firefighter who's using that thermal imaging camera to orient themselves, to direct a stream, to maintain crew integrity, and to improve overall incident safety. So we have a mission here at FLIR, and that mission is we want to make sure that all firefighters can see all the time. That provides for safer movement throughout the structure. When firefighters learn to be firefighters, everything is done digitally. It's done by hand, it's done by feel, sight, hearing. Those types of senses are very unreliable in a structure fire. So because of that, we feel that thermal imaging provides that missing element so that firefighters can perform their tasks quicker, more effective searches, and also allow multiple tasks to occur simultaneous. It allows for everybody to go home. Firefighters can find their way out after falls or collapses, as opposed to, if something happens in a mayday situation, heaven forbid, occurs, everybody's looking using their hands and not their sight. We provide every firefighter with a thermal imaging camera. Now you have multiple views of that structure and of that very dynamic situation to determine where that lost, trapped, disoriented, or missing firefighter is. So we all know what a thermal imaging camera is. It allows somebody to see heat. It allows us to recognize a problem, and we realize that heat really is the problem. When we are thinking in terms of what that heat is telling us, whether it's by recognizing flow path, air track, or any of the other indicators. I'm having a little technical difficulty. I apologize. I'm going to have to reboot this up. I apologize. But when we're thinking in terms of what that heat is telling us, what that air track, what that flow path is telling us, it can mean the difference between using tactics like hit it hard from the yard, or employing tactics like you know, a tactic of an aggressive interior search, an interior attack on that fire. So we want to make sure that that whatever tactic is used is guided by real data. It's guided by what do we need to know in order to be safe, and what do our firefighters need to know in order to be safe, and what do our incident commanders need to know in order to be safe. And all of these things coupled together allow us to, or allow our firefighters to put a picture together that's going to allow them the ability to get out alive and go home. And isn't that the mission that we all want? We talk about, heat being the problem. And this little video here is kind of one of those videos that absolutely positively is kind of funny, but it kind of exemplifies that if we fail to recognize a problem, we have an issue. That's a person branding a horse, and cruel as it may be, the horse decides to take its own revenge on the person and takes care of the problem. So how is thermal imaging helpful to the fire service? It allows us to find the victim. It allows us to find the hazard, and it allows us to find where the nuisance might be. We all, we all know fire departments go on many, many smells and bells calls. What's going on? Where is it going on? How bad is it? The overheated ballast. These little problems can become very large problems very quickly. Well, by utilizing thermal imaging, it allows us to accomplish each one of these three things without putting ourselves at undue risk, and by giving us early indication of problems. So in order to understand the importance of thermal imaging, you have to, and the uses of thermal imaging, we have to understand how thermal imaging works. So this is the physics lesson for everybody for the day. An infrared camera or thermal imaging camera works within the infrared light spectrum. It basically detects that thermal image, or that infrared energy, and converts it into an electronic signal. The electronic signal is then processed in order to produce a thermal image on a video monitor, and we employ temperature calculations to it, and that heat along with those temperature calculations are then displayed on the screen that we all see on a thermal imaging camera. So what is the infrared light spectrum? This is the entire energy spectrum here. And as you can see way on the left-hand side, it starts with cosmic rays and gamma rays and moves into X-rays and ultraviolet rays. And then by the way, we measured this whole spectrum in microns. The visible light that we actually see is between 0.4 and 0.7 microns. Anything beyond that 0.7 microns is infrared energy, and you have near infrared, medium infrared, and then far infrared, and sunlight incorporates or is incorporated into that entire spectrum. So when we look at that, we're talking about a wavelength that's very, 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 very weak and subtle for the most part, and it kind of answers the question, why does a thermal imaging camera not have the ability to look through glass, look through water, look through shiny metal objects, and why is that? Well, it's because the energy isn't strong enough to penetrate. So when we're thinking about what we're actually measuring with fire service thermal imaging cameras, we're looking at between 0.7 and about 14 microns within that energy spectrum. So where has thermal imaging, where has it been? Where is it going? Where is it today? What that individual is holding in the palm of their hand is a core for a thermal imaging camera. The micropolometer, the lens, the processor, it's basically just a small computer chip. In days gone by, that part of the thermal imaging camera that actually did the work would be about the size of a person's fist. So the technology has gotten much, much, much smaller, and as it's gotten smaller, it's become more personal. So why should we be considering the use of personal ticks? Why should fire departments be considering the use of personal ticks? Why should salespeople be talking to fire departments about personal ticks? Because being lost, trapped, or disoriented inside of a burning structure is one of those experiences that any firefighter that's been there will tell you is the most harrowing experience there is. It's the scariest moment of their career. Having that tick helps prevent that firefighter disorientation and that lack of disability or visibility. So when we're talking about eliminating causative factors of firefighter injury and death, the biggest thing that we can do is give a person the ability to see. So why is it that we have to think so hard in today's climate about who gets the ability to see? You know, you think about where thermal imaging started. It started with one thermal imaging camera for an entire fire department. It was normally kept on the chief's car because it cost as much as a car. Then it transferred over to one thermal imaging camera for every piece of apparatus because the cost came down, but it was still cost prohibitive. Now, with the days of thermal imaging cameras being sub $2,000 for individual thermals for firefighters, it's very, very cost effective to outfit an entire fire department top to bottom with thermal imaging cameras. When we look at firefighter causes of injury and death, lost, trapped, and disoriented is one of the leading causative factors to that, you know, outside of the medical causes, you know, heart attacks and heat related issues. So if we have nearly 20% of causative factors of firefighter injury or death being vision related, we have a duty to our firefighters and to the fire departments that we serve and sell to make sure that every firefighter can see. When we think about it, we don't allow our firefighters to share their protection, you know, their PPE. They nowadays don't really share their SCBAs. You know, every firefighter gets on scene, they have an SCBA, and generally they're issued their own face piece. They're not sharing their ability to communicate. Everybody's issued a portable radio. So why are they sharing their sight? And the biggest thing that people come up with is, well, you know, it's a cost factor. Well, okay, an SCBA costs around $6,000. PPE is $2,500 to $3,500. A radio is $4,000 to $6,000. But when we look, the ability to give our firefighters sight, $1,385. How can we not do that for our firefighters? Some of the benefits of a personal thermal imaging camera: it allows the firefighter to conduct their tasks with speed. And with speed comes increased survivability for both victims as well as the firefighters themselves. We know that fire is doubling in size every 30 seconds, and in that situation, if we fail to do anything, is going to get worse and become immediately dangerous to their life and health and their ability to survive. Prevention of things that are happening by being able to use that thermal imaging camera to recognize flow path, air track. We're able to prevent things from getting worse. We're able to you know, show our firefighters that they have the ability to change their environment in ways that they've never been able to change it before by applying water strategically in places that you know, it used to be thought, well, if we put it here, we're going to push the fire. Well, the UL NIST studies now show that water's not pushing fire. And obviously the safety factor, you know, giving every firefighter at an incident, you know, the ability to see increases their safety exponentially. So the speed, obviously, finding victims is what every fire department is after. They want to be able to save lives with speed and efficiency, understanding that the human body is able to go no longer than 6 minutes in an oxygen deprived atmosphere. We understand that the fire itself is using oxygen, and with all the byproducts of combustion, asphyxiation occurs and smoke inhalation occurs quicker than it ever has before. So the quicker that our firefighters can find victims using thermal imaging cameras, the more survivable these atmospheres are becoming for victims that are inside. And by giving every firefighter the ability to see, all of these hazards that are associated with the fire or the incident are going to be dealt with much more quickly because of more eyes. And as you can see in that smoke-filled atmosphere that was shown in just the prior slide here, you can see there was a victim there. Speed, more precise and complete with more eyes. You have a fire is a dynamic situation, and that dynamic situation is not going to get any better unless water is applied to put the wet stuff on the hot stuff, and to apply it in a strategic fashion that's going to help that dynamic situation get better or de-escalate rather than escalate. So by putting a thermal imaging camera on every firefighter, we have multiple vantage points in order to make sure that happens. Prevention. Finding problems during nuisance calls to prevent fire. Seeing potential hazard areas. Finding that all important secondary point of egress. And keeping an eye on all members. All of these things contribute to making sure that fire departments can prevent that situation from getting worse. This is a quote from a firefighter at an incident. During my fire, I was amazed at how quickly things changed from "I smell smoke, but it's probably nothing" to "I don't know if we should call 911" to "well, at least everyone is safe." That was the homeowner. Less than 7 minutes passed from when they saw the faintest wisp of smoke to when they took this picture. A house today with modern fuel loads, a very much petroleum based living space that we live in. Everything's, petroleum is in the foam and the cushions and in the fabric and the nylons and everything that we use to decorate our homes. Something that's relatively minor can become very, very major in the blink of an eye. And to have firefighters or civilians caught up in that is definitely very, very, very dangerous. So using your thermal imaging camera wisely. This was in Fire Apparatus magazine and was written by a gentleman by the name of Carl Nix. And Mr. Nix basically states that using a TIC could increase safety, efficiency, and effectiveness. Firefighter safety is the first and most critical benefit of using a TIC. So it begs the question, why do we still have departments out there that aren't equipping all of our firefighters with thermal imaging cameras?